A congressional standoff over an interim emergency coronavirus relief package may be at an end. Aides say Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer are expected to reach a deal this week. And the news comes after Democratic leaders said they were not backing down on their demands. The measure must include money for state and local governments, hospitals, food assistance, and rapid testing.
Senate Democrats were accused of blocking a Republican push to unanimously pass the bill, which would add $250 billion to the loan program for small businesses decimated by the pandemic.
And joining us now is Florida Republican Congressman, that is Greg Steube. Good morning. Good to see you, sir. How you holding up?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're holding up as well. A couple questions for you, Congressman. Administration officials, they're warning that loan program a lot of us are talking about, that Paycheck Protection Program, it may run out of monies. What's happening here? Isn't this a bipartisan effort? We feel like maybe that money needs to get into the hands of the employees and the business owners.
Well, and I thought originally out of the $2.2 trillion, we should have put much more money into that pot specifically for small businesses. I mean, small businesses are the lifeblood of our country and the lifeblood of Florida. I got a call from one of my small business owners who has over 50 employees, and he was having trouble navigating it, and he's worried. And we talked yesterday, he's worried that the fund's going to run out of money. And I said, look, I think of any of the funds that's going to get replenished to ensure that our small businesses that are continuing to pay their employees during this time, instead of furloughing them or cutting them loose, they're going to be reimbursed for that, just like we did in the beginning of that bill.
Another story we're following, the National Governors Association has called on Congress to allocate an additional $500 billion to states and governments to help offset state revenue shortfalls, of course, due to the coronavirus. So, Congressman, what's the situation like in your state?
Well, I mean, Florida is very nimble in that regard. I served in the Florida legislature for 8 years, and we have to balance our budget by the Constitution every year. So if there's going to be a shortfall, and we built significant reserves in Florida, in my short time there in 8 years, we had almost $5 billion in reserves. So there's reserves, and the current state leaders have said there's enough in reserves to try to be able to dampen what we've lost in sales tax revenue to the state of Florida. So states like Florida, I think, were prepared for situations like this and disasters. You know, we deal with hurricanes on a regular basis here, so we had a very healthy reserve fund. So I think Florida will be fine. States get to decide if they want to spend more money in certain areas. We in Florida reimburse hospitals for Medicaid. We reimburse hospitals for uninsured healthcare. So I think a state like Florida is well positioned to be able to withstand some of this for a period of time.
Congressman, how does a bill get passed right now? As I understand, the House is in recess. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she'd like to have something signed by the end of the month. But how do you do that if not everyone's together ready to go?
Well, and you know, it's interesting that you asked that, because just yesterday, the majority leader sent out guidance that we're not expected back until May 4th. Barring some type of an emergency, Congress isn't going to come back to Washington until May 4th. So that's another 2 weeks. And if they're going to try to pass something during that time, it's going to have to be with unanimous consent, or it's going to have to be by a voice vote. I would have supported just more money for the small business section of the PPP loans. I certainly would have supported that with unanimous consent or a voice vote. I think if they do more than that, the things that Speaker Pelosi wants, I think you're going to have a lot of Republicans crying foul that you're going to try to pass something like that while we're all gone.
And very interesting stuff. We'll watch that. You've also introduced a bill, I want to talk about this, condemning China's seat on the UN Human Rights Council. I'd love to know your stance on that.
Well, it's just, I mean, a country that certainly isn't the standard bearer of human rights have actually been criticized by our own State's Department and former ambassadors and former secretaries. So it's just amazing to me that the UN would take China, who has a host of long list of human rights violations, and put them actually on the Human Rights Council. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy there. And if we're going to continue to be a part of the United Nations, things like that need to be dealt with swiftly.
Wow, that's fascinating, and that effort that you're taking. Also, we've heard that you've hosted a virtual town hall, of course, not able to meet with constituents face to face. So what are people saying in Florida? Of course, we're approaching the summer tourism season. Are they concerned about not getting that revenue?
It's a host of myriad of different concerns. We've done teletown halls to my whole district. We've done some with chambers. I did some with a business group. So we have kind of a lot of different teletown halls that we're doing. We're going to try to do one this week with farmers and ranchers. I would say it's first a lot of questions as it relates to the coronavirus, making sure that small businesses can get these loans, how to navigate that process. In Florida, we had some challenges initially with the unemployment compensation system, which is a state-run system. The feds just send out the money and then the states administer it. So we were directing people in that regards. And that I think the governor and the state has rectified a lot of the problems with the unemployment compensation system. So things seem to be running smoothly. I'm not getting calls like I was before from our healthcare providers, which tells me that they're getting all the supplies that they need. And I think now it's just waiting for everything to get turned back on and people go back to work. It looks like maybe the beginning of May, mid-May, that we can start doing that. If they're calling us back up to Congress May 4th, hopefully business can go back to normal at the beginning of May.
A lot of people are hoping for that. Thank you for everything. Stay safe out there. Best to you and all those in Florida. Congressman Greg Steube, good to see you.